Studies were done on the elderly. These are old people in critical care with pneumonia. They gave them vitamin C and they reduced the mortality by 80%. Guess
Wow.
how much they gave each of these elderly people. How much vitamin C do you
10,
think they gave,
10,
James?
20,000 milligrams? More?
200. That's 1/3 of a big box discount store tablet that'll cost you 2.5 cents.
Hi, it's James here from Food Matters, and today I am interviewing somebody that I first interviewed, we just calculated this, 14 years ago for a project called Food Matters. And you might remember him because he had such catchphrases as good health makes a lot of sense, but it doesn't make a lot of dollars. And also, 1/4 of what you eat keeps you alive, and 3/4 of what you eat keeps your doctor alive. Now, this controversial gentleman's words are as true today as they were back then. And today we're going to be focusing on vitamin C. This particular nutrient has been known to cure over 30 major diseases, and for over 70 years we've known this information. So if so, why haven't you heard more about it? Why haven't doctors used vitamin C as medicine? And today we're going to learn all about the history of orthomolecular medicine, which is using nutrients essentially instead of drugs. And we're going to learn about vitamin C therapy for disease treatment, including COVID-19, and how to build a robust immune system, plus what you need to know about the current landscape of this virus and protecting yourself and understanding next steps. So Andrew Saul is my guest, and he has over 40 years experience in natural health education. His world-famous free access educational website, dryourself.com. I want to encourage you to check it out. This was a huge resource when we first started our journey with Food Matters and helped us attain a lot of information to help my father heal from chronic fatigue syndrome, depression, and anxiety. So I really feel this is such a powerful website. It's a peer-reviewed and the largest non-commercial natural health resource on the internet. He's also the author of the popular books, I love this one, Doctor Yourself and Fire Your Doctor. And he's the editor of the award-winning book, The Orthomolecular Treatment of Chronic Disease, and also the filmmaker of the movie That Vitamin Movie. Andy Saul, it's been 14 years since catch-ups. We've got a lot to discuss, my friend.
Well, we do. It's good to be with you, James. Let's get going.
Let's get going. So, since Food Matters, we really covered a lot of ground in this film about really following the money in many respects. And in doing so, the film highlighted through your interview and other experts that a lot of therapies that are, as you say, cheap, safe, simple, and effective, I love this, are being left by the wayside because exclusive profits cannot be made by these megalithic or monolithic, power structures in the pharmaceutical and the food industry and the healthcare industries. And if we look at coronavirus, it's fascinating because here's a viral pandemic globally, right? It's like a big new virus that we're exposed to. And yet you and I know that fresh air, being barefoot, good food, vitamin D, vitamin C, things like this boost immunity. And yet nobody has said anything about any of this. And in fact, like you just mentioned, there are researchers showing that vitamin C is effective for the treatment. We're not even talking about, I was talking about prevention, just, hey, everybody in the world, we've got a viral pandemic, let's do these things. And now we're not even seeing that. Like, why are we not seeing this news propagated by every outlet in the world that they need to boost their nutrient intake? They need to eat more natural foods. They need to get outside and get fresh air and be barefoot and do all these natural things that we know boost the immune system, reduce inflammation, and help prepare us for the onslaught of things that are naturally trying to attack us. Why don't we see this, Andy?
It's a miscarriage of basic education. And the most basic thing to understand about our immune system is that it's absolutely dependent on vitamins. Now, this is in every nutrition textbook ever written, and I've taught out of a few of them. I've taught biology and cell biology and clinical nutrition all the way through, even at the doctoral and postdoctoral level. And the one thing everybody knows, every dietitian, every nurse, supposedly every doctor, knows that the immune system absolutely has to have enough vitamin C. And they stop right there. Well, enough vitamin C means, well, you have your glass of orange juice and you're done. But that's not true. What happens in sickness is that you have what Dr. Robert Fulton Cathcart, an American surgeon, called acute induced scurvy. This means that the virus sucks out the C and creates a deficiency. Because you're sick, you need more C. In that, a dry sponge holds more milk. A body that is sick will hold more vitamin C. And Dr. Cathcart developed a way of using not intravenous vitamin C, which, by the way, is terrific if someone's already in the hospital, but oral vitamin C, which is less expensive, less invasive, and obviously more available to everyone. Oral doses of vitamin C will do the job if you take enough. And everybody wants to know, how much vitamin C should I take? And the answer is, I don't know, but you can find out. So the jingle I've been using now for close to half a century of teaching is you take enough C to be symptom-free, whatever the amount might be. Now, Cathcart said you take enough vitamin C to feel better, but not so much as causes loose stool. And this is called bowel tolerance. So you take all the C you can hold, but not so much as makes you uncomfortable. And we're not talking about diarrhea. Nobody wants diarrhea. We're talking about flatulence, the rumble in the belly, gastric distress, just basically the sign that maybe I better not take any more right now. And that's right. You should just not take any more right now. At that level, your body has a tremendous amount of vitamin C. Now, why would it want that? Well, your white blood cells, who have been called the policemen of the body, your white blood cells absolutely have to have vitamin C to do their job. Well, sickness causes vitamin C depletion. It does. And at time when you need more vitamin C, your white blood cells will accumulate vitamin C 80 times more than blood plasma. Now, that means they like it. Most animals make their own vitamin C when they're sick. They make 10, 20, 30 times more vitamin C when they're sick. Now, if a sick animal makes more C, and if white blood cells need more C, then we take more C. This is not complicated. The way I describe it is it's simple, but it's not easy. It's very, very simple, and it's deceptive because most people think, if it were this simple, my doctor would already be telling me about it. It would be on the news, and everyone would be doing it. No, it doesn't quite work like that.
Look, when we think about immunity in this way, obviously we're discussing how vitamin C can be effective as a therapy. And there's two different distinctions here, and I want to discuss this a little bit further. Orthomolecular medicine, which is a beautiful mouthful of a word, and I've been saying it now for 13, 14 years, so it rolls off my tongue quite easily. But for most people, like, what even is this? And it was really, like you've said before, it was sort of this Nobel laureate or two-time Nobel laureate, Linus Pauling, that sort of started to introduce a lot of this work, and he was sort of going up against the medical fraternity and saying, hey guys, I've been working in vitamin therapy and I've noticed that vitamins help the body heal naturally better than many drugs. We should be paying attention to this. And here's a smart guy. Meanwhile, we all ignored it. And this is just a travesty for people that are suffering, because your website helped guide me through experiences of doing high-dose nutrient therapy when I've had a flu or viral infections and experienced personal rapid recovery, and I've guided other people through it. So talk to me a little bit about Linus, orthomolecular medicine. How can people understand this in lay terms so that they can start to maybe think about how they might introduce this therapy even themselves into their lives?
Well, the first step is to take a look and see for yourself, what these doctors are actually saying. And that's why at dryourself.com, I have the actual articles and papers by the doctors for you to read. And you might think, well, these are going to be technical. I won't be able to understand them. No, that's not true. Linus Pauling was a good writer. Abram Hoffer was a good writer. Robert Cathcart, Frederick Robert Conner, they were good writers. They were also good doctors. So I have their papers, with their permission, at my website. Again, you don't even have to scroll down. It's right there, right at the top. Just click, 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 click. It'll keep you busy for a good long time. It's all free, and there's no products to buy. I have no financial connection with the supplement industry at all. I don't even sell my books at my website. So you can go to dryourself.com, which is, by the way, peer-reviewed by physicians for accuracy. And you can see what these doctors are doing and copy them. And what you'll see is they're all saying something along this line. When you're sick, you need more vitamin C. How much vitamin C do you need? It depends on how sick you are. How do you determine the proper dose? You use a therapeutic trial. You start taking it, and you see how it works. And when you listen to the doctors and the nurses who use high-dose vitamin C, many are just coming into it. They all are the same way. Well, we didn't really think it would work, but the patient was dying. So we figured nothing to lose. And in 2 days, they were better. And in 4 days, they were out of the hospital. I'm thinking, as one example, Dr. Enkun Mao in China. And he did a study with patients with high doses of vitamin C. And he had close to 50 cases, and every single one recovered from COVID, and they were either moderate to severe, because he was working in a critical care ward. In fact, he is head of a critical care ward at a major Chinese hospital. He had one patient who he didn't think was responding quickly enough to the 12 to 24,000 milligrams of C they were giving them intravenously. This person was really very, very dangerously ill. So he gave him an extra 50,000 milligrams of vitamin C. He got better. Now, that's a doctor taking care of the patient to the best of his ability. That's a doctor, first do no wrong, first do no harm. That's what medical students are supposed to learn right away. Sometimes they forget that after years of residency and being battered by government regulations and insurance policies. But first do no harm, and secondly, to the best of my ability for the good of the patient. And vitamin C is exactly that. Common sense tells us that if the immune system requires vitamin C, we give more vitamin C when someone's sick. Would you like to confirm this? All you have to do is test the vitamin C levels of COVID patients. They're very, very low or undetectable. And while we're at it, I'm no one-trick pony here. The same is true with vitamin D, as in Doug. If you test COVID patients, you'll find their vitamin D levels are very, very low. They also need magnesium, selenium, and zinc. Indeed, the International Society for Orthomolecular Medicine has been recommending this all through the COVID crisis, and most people have never heard of the International Society for Orthomolecular Medicine, or its president, Dr. Atsuo Nagasawa, professor of medicine in Tokyo. Now, Atsuo and I have worked on this along with other doctors all around the world, and we're constantly putting this out there, constantly putting it up in the social media, constantly feeding the commercial media. The Orthomolecular Medicine News Service has been doing this since 2004. And I know the major media get our releases because once in a while one of the newspapers picks it up. But they have totally ignored 51 releases we did since the beginning of COVID, almost all of them on vitamin C and nutritional therapy for COVID. There is a blackout. And you can test this. Go to orthomolecular.org and you'll see our archive. Go to orthomolecular.org or click through from dryourself.com for the Orthomolecular Medicine News Service. And the archive there has all of the releases, all free access, non-commercial, no advertising, in 8 languages.
Wow. So there is a great silencing happening here, Andy. And it seems that the powers that be are more interested in us learning about a vaccine or, staying indoors or social distancing or wearing a mask. And I can understand that the populace might see this as an effective strategy and are happy to follow along. Yet there's a lot more people questioning this and saying, well, hang on, we should all be focusing on boosting our immune system. That's going to help protect us against the viral onslaught. And I want to share some of my personal experiences with vitamin C because it might help to allay the viewer a little bit further into the practicality of this. And I've gotten all of this from your website, and we've republished and linked to your website from foodmatters.com as well. And when I've had a cold or a flu, like a significantly bad one that bothers me, I will take vitamin C till bowel tolerance, as you say, to that level where you feel gripey in the stomach or you feel like you go to the toilet. And when on a normal day-to-day basis, if I maybe take 4 grams or 6 grams of vitamin C, that will give me a funny feeling in the stomach and the loose stool. And this is not an uncomfortable feeling just for people listening to this. This is just, it's like a little sign that you've got enough vitamin C, that your body is reaching that tolerance level. Now, when I've had a viral condition, I've been taking 20, 25, 30 grams of vitamin C and not at all experienced that loose stool, that bowel tolerance. And this speaks to what you mentioned before. When you're sick, your white blood cells, your immune system needs more vitamin C to fight off illness. And that's been a practical experience of mine. And also, what I wanted to suggest and talk about maybe next is that vitamin C is not just this miraculous thing for viral conditions. It's helpful for so many different illnesses. And when you mentioned before, you said the vitamin C levels in patients with COVID are low, vitamin D levels are low, selenium, magnesium are low. Now, I know, for instance, in the research I've read, that if you have low selenium, either in your soil as a culture, you have high risk of cancer. But if you have low selenium, low vitamin C, low vitamin D, that increases your risk of cancer as well. So there is so many different elements of disease prevention and treatment that are linked to vitamin C and nutrient deficiencies. Can you speak a little bit broadly to this for a moment so we can understand how important nutrient intake and support in our diet, in our life, or through supplementation can be for the prevention and treatment of illness?
I can. And the first thing we want to do is establish that vitamins are not drugs and drugs are not vitamins. We can start there with agreement. We need to remember that not one cell of your body is made out of a drug. And every cell in your body, all 40 trillion of them, are constructed only in the presence of vitamins, which act usually as coenzymes in the body. An example of this would be for those of us who have suffered through physiology. You may remember this giant biochemical double Ferris wheel from hell called the Krebs cycle, or the citric acid cycle. And it's very, very complex, and it's enough to make you weep when you're a college sophomore, but there it is. The take-home message from this is that this is the common final energy production pathway in the body. That's how you get your energy from your food. And it absolutely depends on the B vitamins. And without B vitamins, it stops. Now that's very important. The same is true of vitamin C. Without vitamin C, your body cannot make collagen. Collagen is the glue that holds your cells together. And when you don't have enough vitamin C, your collagen is weak, and that can cause different things. For instance, if there was cancer, the cancer can push its way out because the cells are not bonded together very well because of low vitamin C and too little collagen, therefore, or weak collagen. Or the walls, the thin walls of the blood vessels, small and large, are weak, and it can actually cause leaking of blood and bleeding. So with scurvy, you might see bleeding gums. With advanced COVID, you might see pinpoint specks all over the body, signs of internal hemorrhaging or surface hemorrhaging. These are signs that you need more vitamin C. So here's vitamin C that can help slow down cancer because it stops it from pushing out. It can help prevent stroke by keeping your artery from bleeding into itself and forming a clot. Vitamin C, if you take enough of it, helps to act as an antidepressant. And vitamin C also can build your immune system, as we've talked about. And if you take enough of it, it's an antiviral. If you take vitamin C and viruses and put them in a test tube and shake, you'll kill the viruses. And on top of that, vitamin C is useful for still more things. And one of the most spectacular is it's selectively toxic to cancer cells. Now, in the United States, the National Institutes of Health has actually funded at least 2 studies where they've looked into this. And very high doses of vitamin C are selectively toxic to cancer cells. This means vitamin C is a chemotherapy for cancer. But unlike conventional pharmaceutical chemotherapy, which hurts, doesn't kill, but hurts healthy cells, vitamin C does not hurt healthy cells. It only hurts the cancer cells. Now, this means it's too good for too many things.
Yeah.
And the medical profession simply passes it off as something that can't be true. I think it's sort of like when you go through life, people might think that life is hard, no one will ever care for them, and then they find that special someone, and all of a sudden, everything changes. Now, how simple is that? And yet, how unlikely is that? I have friends that come from other sides of the world that met and got married. And it's the most amazing thing because what are the odds, right? And yet, perfect couple, one from one hemisphere, one from the other, and there you go. So sometimes the solution in nature is so simple that our ego dismisses it. And when you put ego and power, and when you put money all together, it is a warlock's brew, and it's just not good. Here's an example of how goofy it gets. Have you ever heard of Dr. Anthony Fauci? Perhaps you have. He's head of the National Institutes of Health Infectious Disease Division. And in the United States, he's been on television almost constantly for the last year or so talking about COVID. And his pronouncements are considered to be right at the top. Everybody should do what he says. Well, in 2016, the Washingtonian magazine, a magazine that's been published in the U.S. for 60 years and has won several national press awards, the Washingtonian magazine published an interview with Dr. Fauci, who said vitamin D and vitamin C help strengthen your immune system. I take 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C a day, said Dr. Fauci. Now, I don't know why he hasn't mentioned it since. Because everyone in the world, certainly in America, is watching and listening to this pundit. And he's talked about everything except taking more vitamin C to make sure your immune system's strong. Look, medication for COVID, if we can get a good one, I'm for it. Vaccination for COVID. I'm not in favor of vaccinations, but I will concede that if you can come up with a safe and effective vaccination, I'm for it. The one that's out there now, the ones that are out there now are not well tested, and therefore I don't consider them safe. Without testing, how can they be? I wouldn't give those to a pet goldfish, let alone to a child or a grandmother. So a safe and effective vaccination or a safe, effective drug is a good idea if we can come up with one. I don't think we have yet. But while we're waiting, the immune system's the only game in town. So it just makes sense to take the advantage that we have. We have our immune system, which will get us through a lot of things. When we were kids, we used to take sick pigeons and keep them up in our treehouse and nurse them back to health. And they were walking all over our arms and dropping the droppings. We'd feed them crackers, never washed our hands. We were taking dead frogs and all kinds of things, and no one, and I mean no one in our neighborhood died or even got sick from this because exposure to this strengthens your immune system. When your baby is born, that baby's immune system is not very strong. That's why you need the mother's milk and the colostrum, and that's why that baby needs to be exposed to things. Children that are raised on farms and exposed to the dander, the hair of many, many different types of animals rarely have allergies because they have been strengthened by exposure. One of the worst things about this COVID epidemic is that smarmy, throwaway, conversation-ending non sequitur, stay safe. Are you staying safe? Baloney. If you think you can outrun a virus, that's like thinking that you're Arnold Schwarzenegger and you can outrun an explosion. You can't do that. I'm here to tell you. The movies are wrong. You can't outrun an explosion. So you can't hide from a virus, nor, even if you could, would it make you safe. You're not safe because you're in a bubble. You're safe because you're strong. So rather than hide, rather than separate people from their churches, their schools, their hobbies, their volunteer work, their jobs, their friends, their family, rather than have them social distance, rather than stick little children in abusive masks and scare them so they don't even want to be hugged, they can't even relate to their friends, they can't go to gym class or music, they can't socialize, which for children, and I've taught every grade, mind you, from first through postdoc. I've taught primary school, I've taught middle school, I've taught high school. Children need this interaction. In fact, it's the only part of school that they like. Now they have just the lessons and none of the interaction, and you think they're going to do well? Reports are coming in already from school districts that kids' grades are going down. I know an Ivy League university in the United States, which I will not mention, but I know a faculty member there who confirmed that because of COVID and online learning, they don't give any grade below a C now. So what we're going to have to deal with is a very, very difficult thought. We're wrong. We have to turn around. Staying safe, staying apart, covering up, hiding, staying indoors, all of those things will fail to make our immune system strong. If you want a strong immune system, you have to take your vitamins and you have to be exposed. Here's the kicker. Many people have been exposed to COVID and they don't even know it. Many people have had the virus and showed no symptoms. Quite a few people will have the symptoms and they'll be very mild. And of course, a good number of people will be sick as a dog for a while. I know people very well that have been sick as a dog for 3-4 days. Some, it's been a little longer than that. But the people that we're worried about are the people that are already at risk from dying of pneumonia or severe acute respiratory syndrome. And this is usually the elderly, the frail, those that are confined. And these are the people we have to worry about. Now, here's where it gets good. Maybe you and your doctor aren't interested in megadoses of vitamin C. Maybe you don't want to give tens of thousands of milligrams. Maybe your hospital won't allow it. Maybe you're philosophically opposed to it, or maybe you just haven't read Dr. Cathcart's work, which is right at drself.com. But here's what you can do. Studies were done on the elderly. These are old people in critical care with pneumonia. Now, pneumonia has been called the old man's friend for generations. Jack LaLanne, who is a wonderful fitness guru, my mother used to exercise watching him on TV when I was a little boy. That's how far back this goes. Jack LaLanne died at the age of 96 from pneumonia. You see, it is the old man's friend. Sometimes the immune system's just wearing out and we don't live forever. And this is a case in point. So pneumonia is a big risk for elderly, and it's not really COVID that kills people. It's the pneumonia or the SARS that takes them out. So the study was done with men and women that were elderly and had pneumonia so severe that they were in hospitals.
Sure.
They gave them vitamin C and they reduced the mortality by 80%. Guess how much they gave each of these elderly people to save the life of 4 out of 5 of them. How much vitamin C do you think they gave?
10, 20,000 milligrams? 10, 20 grams?
200.
200 grams. Wow.
200 milligrams, James.
Oh, whoa. That's not much.
That's 1/3 of a big box discount store tablet that'll cost you 2.5 cents. 200
that's low.
milligrams. Very low.
And it was that amount
RDA
that caused an 80% increase in recovery. Wow.
Now, here's another one. Now, let's go to infants. Let's go to little kids between 0 and 5 years of age, hospitalized with pneumonia. Now, you're a parent,
Scary.
you know, and you remember when your young ones were little, nothing would terrify you more than a child with pneumonia that has to go into intensive care. So visualize how a parent feels, everyone, or a grandparent. And these children had pneumonia, were in hospital, and they gave them vitamin C. In 24 hours, their oxygenation level came right up. And the fatality rate went way down. Guess how much they gave?
I'm going to go low this time. 500 milligrams, half a gram. How much?
200 milligrams.
No, come on. That's nothing. I
I'm
mean,
not
this
kidding.
is the levels you can get also from food. Like I'm familiar with two different things, Andy, here. Maybe describe this at this moment. You have levels of nutrients you can get from food. This is everyday nutrients, but the problem is our food nutrient levels have gone like this, down, because we've ruined the soil, we've obliterated everything, and now the average vitamin C in fruits and vegetables is much lower than 30, 40, 50 years ago. So, but typically you can get this type of milligrams, 60, 80, 100, 200 milligrams, out of a good whole foods diet on a day-to-day basis. But there's also another thing, which is what you're talking about with cancer or severe COVID patients, where they take high doses. So 1,000 milligrams is 1 gram. And these high doses are 20, 30, 50 grams, 100 grams or 100,000 milligrams, right, intravenously. And it acts differently in the body than small amounts. But even you're saying with these patients, small amounts, 200 milligrams, were able to cause these miraculous statistics. So every amount counts, really, doesn't it? But the more, the better if you're very severely sick. Is that correct?
That's right. Now let's just take a look at this and make it a nice, simple continuum. When you take 200 milligrams, hospitalized babies or hospitalized elderly with pneumonia, the death rate goes down dramatically with 200 milligrams. Now, what happens when you give a lot more? I have case histories coming into me from physicians who I may not name because they will lose their license, but they sent me their case histories anyway, and we publish them anonymously. And by the way, if you publish what I published, Facebook will block you, by the way. But these are physicians who've reported into me, and here's what they did. This one doctor sent in 25 case histories of people with tested out for COVID, all confirmed, and they had moderate to severe COVID, and they were treated with vitamin C. And this doctor gave 25,000 milligrams of vitamin C intravenously each day for 3 days. 100% recovery rate. So,
and you're talking about
milligrams,
hospitalized patients here. This isn't the people that are asymptomatic or have small symptoms. These are people that are like taking up the hospital beds, so to say, which is the big problem we have, which is this spike in patients going into care. So we must slow that down so we don't overburden our healthcare system. And you're saying this doctor gave 25 grams or 25,000 milligrams of vitamin C intravenously a day for 3 days, and he had a 100% recovery rate.
That's correct. And they were not hospitalized because they didn't need to be, which obviously puts our healthcare situation in a better light, because now those beds are available for others who may need it. If you need hospitalized care, you should get it. The fact of the matter is the trick here is to have the vitamin C so you don't have to go to the hospital. And if you do have to go to the hospital, have the vitamin C so you don't have to go to intensive care. And if you are in intensive care, have the vitamin C so you do not die. So it's simply a matter of degree. To prevent, the International Society for Orthomolecular Medicine recommends 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C 3 times a day or more.
3 grams.
5,000 units of 5,000 units of vitamin D, which can taper down to 2,000 units of D a day. 400 milligrams of magnesium, which is only slightly more than the RDA. 100 micrograms of selenium, and 20 milligrams of zinc, which is about 3 times the RDA. This costs about $1. We've checked this out all around the world, and it's about $1 a day for that. So vitamin C, D, magnesium, selenium, and zinc are very, very important for the immune system. And what this means is preventively, you are less likely to have the symptoms, and if you do, the symptoms are more likely to be moderate. Now, when people are in the hospital, they're already hooked up to an IV. Have you ever seen anyone in a hospital who didn't have a tube running? So how hard is it? You just patch in the vitamin C. They're already connected, and this way they don't have to take any tablets. People that are sick in intensive care, they don't want to swallow tablets. Maybe they physically can't. Maybe they're so sick that it's not possible. So with Intervenus, for seriously ill patients, you can make it comfortable for them, save their life, help the doctor, help the hospital, help the world. Everybody comes out ahead. This is what's known as a win-win-win-win-win. The only problem with this is there's no money in it.
Yeah, exactly. This is the problem. This is the big problem. And I think, Andy, one of the things you highlighted in Food Matters was, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, you were saying that the drug industry globally is a $500 billion industry, of which $300 billion, so 60% of that, is in the US alone each year. Now, these might be old statistics. I mean, this is 13 years old, so we've probably skyrocketed up from there, or we've gone ahead in terms of the value of that industry. Now, where I'm currently living right now, and I find this juxtaposed position quite a fascinating observation, I'm in Vanuatu, which is a small island nation between Fiji and Australia. And this is a developing country, and I want to tell you a little bit about their response to COVID, because you might like this. They, of course, followed the rhetoric of the rest of the world because everyone was scared, so they shut their borders, right? And anybody that was inbound had to be a resident or a citizen, and they had to quarantine, and this was the measures they took. However, the government came out and on the radio and all over said, okay, we have a sort of global emergency. As a government, we are handing out free seeds and free soil. Please go plant more food, plant more garden, and eat more natural foods. Thank you, goodbye. We'll see you when it's all over. And this was the government's approach. And it reminds me of these nostalgic days of the victory gardens, and everyone's planting food and doing their best to like come together and solve these problems. And now we're just 50 years, 60 years, 70 years after these World War I, World War II times where we used to do these things. And there's countries in the world like Vanuatu that are taking a pandemic response of like plant more food, eat more natural foods, be out in nature. And the soil here is volcanic, natural, ancient soil. So we're probably still seeing high levels of nutrients in the foods here compared to other countries. And yet in the West, we're like shut down, lock up, masks, social distance. No word, like you said, no word whatsoever about vitamin C, selenium, zinc, vitamin D. And this has to speak to the powers that be. I mean, it can't be any other way, because vitamin C is not owned or patentable by anybody. Can you explain this to people for a minute? No one company can make exclusive profits over vitamin C, but AstraZeneca or XYZ can make exclusive profits off a vaccine in partnership with governments and universities, all together in these billion-dollar campaigns to fight this pandemic and improve global health. But really, we're missing the whole point, right? Is this an economic issue?
I can't improve on what you said. That's a very good summary, and it's a very fair summary, and it's a very grim summary. But we have to start with the truth. What we need to do is tell people what Linus Pauling said. Linus Pauling said, when someone with a reputation and great hair and a distinguished position speaks, listen to them and be respectful, but don't believe them. Look into it for yourself and make up your own mind how to live in a better and healthier world. And right now, a lot of people are afraid, and they're being kept afraid. And I'm here to tell you that I'm not afraid of COVID, and you don't have to be afraid of COVID either, because you have an immune system. And this immune system has been greatly perfected over a long period of time. You can look at this theologically and say God knows what he's doing. You can look at this in terms of evolution and say it's the survival of the fittest. Here you are one. You have a wonderful immune system. But the first rule of building a brick wall is that you've got to have bricks. The The first rule of a healthy body is you have to feed it right. And the discussion is not over that principle. The discussion is, what does it mean exactly in terms of dose? And this is a sliding scale. You are not the same person when you're sick as when you're well. Your need for vitamin C when you're healthy could be just 500 milligrams a day or so, maybe more than that. I take much more than that. Some people are happy with just a little. But when you're sick, all bets are off. When I had viral pneumonia some years ago, I took 2,000 milligrams of vitamin C every 6 minutes I was awake. That's 20,000 milligrams an hour. I was sick as a dog playing Scrabble with my wife, God bless her, and I lined up those tablets, and I had the timer, and I had the water and the glass, and I took 2,000 milligrams of C every 6 minutes. I had a high fever, and I was coughing. I felt terrible. I was a mess. That's 20,000 milligrams an hour. In 3 hours, my fever came down 3 degrees, and my cough stopped.
Wow.
Now, this is based not on something that I discovered, but on the work of Dr. Frederick Robert Quanner, a board-certified chest physician, and Duke University Medical School graduate. Dr. Quanner, a specialist physician who knew more about pneumonia than most people. He was doing this back in the 1940s and 50s using megadoses of C, and Quanner wrote, and the papers are at dryourself.com, Quanner wrote that he was curing pneumonia in 72 hours. That's 3 days. That's exactly what the doctors have reported using 25,000 milligrams of vitamin C intravenously. They were curing COVID in 3 days. I say viruses are basically all the same kind of thing. Do they mutate? Yes. Will there be a new strain? Yes. They've always been doing that. This has been going on through all of time. I'm sure all kinds of viruses come and go. It's just the way it works. They're constantly changing. It's an arms race. And you think you're going to find a drug or a vaccine and stay ahead of them? We can't even cure the common cold. What makes you think that you're going to be able to knock out a virus as nasty as COVID? So the secret then is to take a different approach, and you build your own immune system, and that means your body will respond in an ever-flexing way, adapting, always staying caught up with the viruses. This is the way nature built us, and we are being scared into believing that we are helpless. No, you're not. So my suggestion, my prescription, if you like, turn off the television.
There we go. There we go. And, really, Andy, you and I are descendants and survivors of the Black Plague, of the Spanish flu, of all of these things. And our ancestors survived this, obviously. I mean, that's why we're here. So I love the common sense approach that you have. And I don't think anybody can argue with that. We've never been able to conquer a virus, even the common flu. Every year, there was a published article in the UK recently saying that vaccine manufacturers are concerned that there's been so little cases of the flu reported this year, maybe because they're being reported as COVID, so little cases of the flu being reported this year that they're not able to stay ahead of the game and prepare a vaccine for next year. And they're concerned about what that might mean for people that catch the flu next year. And you're just saying, why are you playing this silly game? Why are you doing a new thing every year when you can be boosting the immune system naturally? But I love at the same time you're also saying if there is an effective vaccine, if there is an effective drug and it's been tested and it's been proven safe and effective, then you're okay with that. And I love that too. You're a practical scientist. You are not a heretic. And that's very powerful. So let's get to some deep practicality here. Let's talk about nutrients and vitamins, and we've been speaking deep practicality the whole time, but I want to sort of land the plane for people in terms of day-to-day approach to vitamins and nutrients. And so we get vitamins from our food. We can get vitamins from whole food vitamin supplements. Then we can get vitamins from synthetic supplements. And there are water-based vitamins, like vitamin C, for instance, which you can practically, I believe there is zero recorded deaths from vitamin C overdose. You cannot overdose on a water soluble vitamin, from my understanding. Maybe correct me if I'm wrong. Fat soluble vitamins are a little bit different. They are, take a little bit more time for the body to work through, so you can potentially take too many of them. But it's very hard for vitamins to be dangerous. And yet you have the research we published in Food Matters. There was 106,000 cases of drug-related deaths each year, and that's not including all medical-related deaths, from the right drug, right person, right dose, and they're still dying at that rate, and yet vitamins kill next to nobody. So talk to me about the different types of vitamins and the types of vitamins you recommend, and maybe at the same time speak to synthetic vitamins, because a lot of the purists out there are saying, well, vitamin C is created out of a fermented some GMO something, and it's not natural, and blah blah blah. And what about ascorbic acid or sodium ascorbate? And what about bioflavonoids? And what about all these things? Can you sort of give me a little treatise in a few moments on these questions and this topic for people?
Well, it's certainly a good question and an important one. The first thing we want to do is to pull the rug out under the critics, and I do this with one big pull, and they're not going to like it. Here we go. Most animals make their own vitamin C. What do they make? They make C6H8O6. That is ascorbic acid. That is exactly the same as what is made in a factory. C6H8O6. And when you take chemistry, you learn how to analyze a molecule, and you look for the different patterns and the spectra and all the other things, and you know what you've got. And any good vitamin manufacturer, and by the way, most of the manufacturers of the pure powders are pharmaceutical companies, by the way. They make it. They just don't make a lot from it. But the manufacturers of the wholesale vitamins are usually major pharmaceutical companies. And then there's a lot of places that will tablet and distribute. So animals make ascorbic acid. Plants make ascorbic acid. That's what they do. So how can ascorbic acid not be natural? That's the first thing. Glucose is C6H12O6, which is 4 hydrogens larger than ascorbic acid. You have no problem at all absorbing glucose. Go to any child's birthday party and give them glucose or sucrose and wait 20 minutes and stand back and cover your ears, because it's going to get ugly. There's no problem absorbing sugar, and vitamin C is smaller than the simplest sugar. It's smaller than glucose. By the way, so is niacin. Niacin is even smaller than vitamin C. So the idea that somehow a synthetic vitamin is dangerous or isn't working is wrong. And here's the next step. Almost all research on vitamins, especially vitamin C, showing that they prevent and cure illness, has been done using synthetic cheap vitamins. The third thing is, a lot of people can only afford cheap vitamins. I did an analysis of how much vitamin C you get in an orange and how much an orange costs. I've seen them cost 50 cents or even $1 a piece in the United States, depending on the size of the orange. And you don't get all that much vitamin C from an orange. Oranges are still good, but it's a very pricey way to get your C. Whereas
like
if you go to a big box
or something like this? 60 milligrams?
Perhaps.
Like this?
Plus or minus, yeah. It depends on how fresh that orange is and how it's stored and the size of it and all. But you're about right. The US RDA is 90. In Britain, it's a pitiful 40 or 45. And yet an animal will make, per human body weight equivalent, between 2 and 10,000 milligrams of C a day. So if you have a cat or a dog, they make the human body weight equivalent of 2 to 10,000 milligrams a day. Horse, cow, goat, frog, flea, worm. These animals, birds, wolves, snakes, they all make vitamin C, and they make a lot of it. So the RDA is 90 milligrams, and animals make an order of magnitude more than that, at least 10 times or more than that. The funny thing is, in the United States, the same United States that sets the RDA at 90, the United States Department of Agriculture has standards for monkeys and guinea pigs. Now, if you keep laboratory animals, monkeys or guinea pigs, you have to meet rigorous standards to make sure they're not malnourished. And guinea pigs and monkeys have a recommended amount of vitamin C that's 15 times higher than humans.
Yeah.
So our government values monkeys and guinea pigs more than its own citizens. That's a cynical comment, but it's demonstrably true. Now, here's the next point on looking at vitamins. If you have a lot of money, buy any vitamins you want. But if you need to save money, if you're on a budget, dose is more important than form. And the form issue that concerns most people is, do I need a buffered vitamin C or not? When people take very high doses of vitamin C on an empty stomach, when they're sick, for instance, sometimes they notice some distress. Some people have sensitive tummies. And they can take a buffered vitamin C, such as calcium ascorbate or magnesium ascorbate or sodium ascorbate. And that's still inexpensive, and that will also work pretty well.
Okay, fascinating. And for me personally, in my experience, I've had viral conditions where I've taken your advice and taken a gram or 2 grams every 10 or 15 minutes until it went away and it worked and it was miraculous, and other people have done it. But I find the powdered vitamin C, in terms of being able to achieve a higher dose, very efficient. And so I often personally tend to use that, because 1 teaspoon can be 4 or 5 grams, or 4 or 5,000 milligrams of vitamin C, which is 4 or 5 tablets, essentially, if they're 1,000 milligram tablets. So that can be quite effective. And personally, I mix up all my vitamin C intakes. I eat a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables.
A good idea.
In organic, natural soil. I also supplement. And I supplement. Sometimes I have whole food supplements. Sometimes I have synthetic supplements. But if I'm sick and if I need a high dose, I happily, thankfully, graciously take synthetic vitamins at a high dose, and I get well. Because that's the only place to get such a dose too. If you're talking about taking 20 or 30,000 milligrams when you've got a viral condition or some sort of illness, or you're very sick, it takes thousands of oranges or thousands of natural vitamin C, whole food vitamin C tablets to even get close to that level. And this is the distinction that you make as well. There's vitamin C every day in your body, which you need certain amounts. But then there's, if you're sick, you need more. And that is where synthetic vitamin C can play a very powerful role. And I would much rather take synthetic vitamin C than a drug or a medication if I know that the vitamin C is effective. If, of course, I need a drug or a medication and it's effective for that, I'm not going to back away from that. I also believe that modern science has, and modern medicine has given us many miracles, and they've ignored many miracles too, and that's what we've been speaking about today, right?
Well, the thing we have to remember here is that doctors have a hard job. It's miserable being a physician right now. You've got government regulations, you've got insurance companies on your back, the medical societies, the public, the media, overwork. You have to pay your malpractice insurance, your staff. There's paperwork. I know doctors who will tell you flat out that unless you're a specialist where you have a chance to make a relatively large amount of money, general practitioners have a very, very hard job. They have long hours and miserable pay. So it's not easy being a doctor, and being an oncologist or being an infectious disease specialist has got to be really depressing right now. Or being a specialist in the aging and working with people now who are locked into nursing homes and they can't even see their families. These elderly people have no visitors. And that isn't good. That's not good if you're someone as elderly. They need society just like children do. So what we need to keep in mind here is that the answer is annoying. It's a very annoying answer to think that we're onto something, and it's simple, and it works, and nobody's doing it. And that sets up a disconnect. We think, wait a minute, if it works, if these doctors have done it, these scientists have done it, if the research is there, if this Andrew Saul is actually putting those papers up on his website free, written by medical doctors and peer-reviewed, all of this information's out there, all of this is coming in, it's not being done. And the answer is, we are at fault. We have to change this. And we can do this right now. Right now, everybody, absolutely everybody, there's one free decision that everybody has every day, what they will or will not eat. And you will or will not exercise. You will or will not go out in the fresh air. These are things that we control. When we go to bed, we control. These are things that we can do. And once people recognize that they still have free will, even though governmental authorities have been taking that option away, sooner or later, we're going to do what they did in a movie called Network many decades ago. You may or may not have seen it, but I'll never forget it. And everybody goes to the window and yells out, "I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore." And what's going to happen is people are going to recognize that they've been had. They've been told to do what isn't working, and what's worse, they've been told to not do what will help them. People are being warned off the very thing that their body needs. So unfortunately, this is where I do show my colors, because I really am that hippie guy from the 60s with the white button and the red lettering on it that had the most subversive words I've ever seen in my life. It was my favorite protest button. You know what it said, James?
What's that?
Question authority. And that's what Linus Pauling said. And by the way, Linus Pauling specifically recommended vitamin C powders, just like you're doing. And I think it's nice to know when you are on the same wavelength with a 2-time Nobel Prize winning chemist. And it isn't just Pauling, and it isn't just me, and it isn't just Cathcart and Kleiner and Reardon and Hoffer and the others. There have been thousands of studies on high-dose vitamin C for illness, and all of this can be accessed through PubMed or Medline or any kind of a journal search you want to do. And if that intimidates you, having taught, I know how intimidating it can be. I want you to know that I've saved you the work. You can go to the Orthomolecular Medicine News Service and just paw through our archive there. And we have 300 articles, all peer-reviewed and all referenced with links to the references. So if you would like to learn more, orthomolecular.org has that. It's the Orthomolecular Medicine News Service. And this information is right there, right now. We've been putting this out free of charge. You can subscribe free of charge. It's been put out for 17 years now. And
amazing.
I would like to retire, but my review board won't let me.
Don't retire, Andy. Stay with it. So I want to thank you for your time. This conversation could go on for hours, and I really feel like we should connect more. I feel like we should do some Facebook Lives. I feel like we should do more podcasts and more recordings. The work and the incredible information that you shared with us 14 years ago, of which Food Matters came out 13 years ago, was absolutely groundbreaking, and the world is just, I believe, slowly starting to wake up to that. And what you're sharing today takes that another step further. And I want to just let the viewers know that what we're talking about today is effective for all sorts of other conditions as well. Depression, anxiety, cancer, heart disease, vitamin C, and other types of nutrient therapy are hyper effective. And you can find out more at dryourself.com or watch Food Matters. Go back and watch Food Matters again, wherever it might be. It's on foodmatters.com. And thank you so much for your time. Let's make sure we connect again and not so long between conversations.
Thank you, James. I'd like to mention to people that they can also find my Facebook page where I am the Mega Vitamin Man.
Okay.
And I'm also on MeWe. I'm the Mega Vitamin Man on MeWe. Now, Facebook's a little dicey. They try to censor me, so get there before they take the page down entirely.
Great. Okay. We'll make sure people know about that. Thank you so much for your time, and speak to you soon.
Great. Thank you.